Of all the flagship Nintendo series, Kirby might be the one that I've observed the most from the sidelines. Though the series has seen a steady stream of titles since the 90s, most of them eluded me for one reason or another. Maybe it launched on a console I didn't own, or I didn't hear about it until years later. I was definitely familiar with Kirby, but more through side content, like Kirby Air Ride, a personal favorite of mine, as well as seeing him appear in Super Smash Bros. And catching a few episodes of Kirby Right Back Atcha as a kid. In fact, besides Kirby Superstar Ultra, which I've barely even touched, the only Kirby games that I've owned that I've played before this year were Squeak Squad and Epic Yarn, and I know these games have their fans, but I doubt most put them in their top tier as far as Kirby games go. I did actually experience a bunch of Kirby's older games in preparation for this video though, and it was cool to finally play them. For as simple as Kirby is, I mean most of these games are pretty bare bones mechanically, it's odd how easy it is to stay invested in them. While I personally don't care for the Dreamland games, I might be the only person on the planet who thinks the first one is the best honestly, I grew to really like Kirby's Adventure for its solid platforming and level design, and Kirby Superstar for refining the Kirby gameplay. Had I played them as a kid, there's no doubt I'd like them even more, though even in 2022, I still had a good time there. But growing up, there was a Kirby game we'd frequently rent from Blockbuster back when, that was still a thing you'd do, Kirby 64, the Crystal Shards. The first 3D Kirby game, initially planned for the Nintendo Disk Drive before that add-on went kaput, it was designed, like the other Kirby games, by HAL Laboratory, although Kirby's creator, Masahiro Sakurai, took a backseat as, I imagine, he was too busy with the first Smash Bros. Game. While the first concept for bringing Kirby into 3D, known as Kirby Bowl, was ultimately shelved, HAL came up with a 2.5D platformer that was simple, intuitive, and featured some interesting new concepts for the series. I remember it fondly from my childhood, but hadn't beaten it until now, and I was super stoked to revisit it for this video as chosen by you guys in my viewer poll last year. Though, for clarification, I'm actually playing this off of Kirby's Dream Collection for the Wii, which is actually the only version of Kirby 64 I own. I thought I had an N64 cartridge somewhere around here, but nope. It's the same game just on a different console, and even though you play it with a Wii remote instead of an N64 controller, that doesn't matter that much in this case. And that's because Kirby 64's gameplay is incredibly simple, as you might expect from the pink puffball. You can move around, jump, and inflate yourself to hang above the ground for a short while. Movement appropriately feels a little floaty, and Kirby's momentum, while heavy enough, is nowhere near as tight as other platformers even of the era. Even the previous games had better feeling controls than this, but for what it's worth, Kirby doesn't control bad here, it's just occasionally slow. Beyond the basics, there's a couple of additional mechanics here, like Kirby getting assistance from the friends he meets along his journey. Recurring enemy Waddle Dee, Painter Adeline, and even Kirby's main foe King Dedede all show up on occasion to help you in specific areas, though for the most part, they're just kinda there. Apparently, they were planned to be separate characters that you could take control of, but that was scrapped, and in the final game, they just appear every so often to lend a helping hand. You do get to ride King Dedede around, which is pretty cool, but Waddle Dee really only accompanies you in auto-scrollers, and Adeline mostly just paints you recovery items. Helpful for sure, but not exactly exciting. But there is plenty to be excited about in Kirby 64, such as collecting the titular Crystal Shards, which broke apart after this fairy Ribbon used this giant crystal to escape her homeworld, Ripple Star, after a force known as Dark Matter invades and corrupts the planet. While getting to the end of each level is one of your main tasks, the other is finding and locating each of the 3 Crystal Shards in each level, as well as grabbing one for defeating a boss. Before Kirby's Dream Land 3, the series still carried over the score system, which even back then was already arbitrary as a measure of success, and with these Crystal Shards, you have a literal representation of progress. But finding all the Crystal Shards will require using Kirby's famous copy abilities. By sucking and swallowing enemies, yes, I know what I said, you can copy their attack and use it to your advantage. There are 7 individual powers that provide a minor upgrade, though honestly, Needle and Bomb are the only ones I find really effective. Burning, Cutter, Spark, and Ice are either too slow or too short range, and the less I say about Stone, the better. I never liked this one myself. But the true power comes from combining these copy abilities together, a unique mechanic for Kirby 64 that is seriously awesome. You can combine 2 of the same ability for a more powerful version of it, or mix and match 2 different ones for some wild and crazy attacks. There are 49 different combinations on offer, and some are obviously better than others, but it's really fascinating seeing how creative the designers got with these new powers. Combine Burning and Needle for a flaming arrow that has good range, Burning and Bomb for a cool fireworks attack, Bomb and Cutter for exploding ninja stars, Ice and Spark to turn Kirby into a fridge and drop healing items, or Burning and Cutter to give Kirby a giant freaking flame sword. It can get a little insane sometimes, but I am all for this. This is a genuinely clever way to get the most out of a small pool of abilities, and even when a combined power isn't that useful, I can still appreciate the creativity it took to come up with them. And you'll need these abilities to make it through all the levels on offer. Rather than bringing the world into the third dimension like other series were doing at the time, Kirby 64 remains a two-dimensional platformer just with the environments rendered in 3D. Most maps are linear rooms that stretch out far in one direction, sometimes vertically but often horizontally. It's always clear where you need to go, but some parts of the map that hide secrets are hidden from you, either out of frame or blocked behind an obstacle that can only be cleared with the right combination of copy abilities. The fixed camera angles prevent you from seeing too far ahead, but sometimes the camera gets more dynamic to show you the levels from a different perspective, and I really like that. I always appreciate it when 2.5D games get creative with the presentation. Some rooms are even built around a cylindrical pattern where Kirby walks around in a circle, delivering a really cool view that you didn't see that often around this time. It does strike me as odd that HAL didn't try to do a full 3D platformer this time, as that was a direction a lot of series were taking, but I imagine they didn't want to shake up Kirby's core formula too much. Now, I am beyond excited for their first real foray into genuine 3D with Kirby and the Forgotten Land, which does look awesome. But that's for another day. There are 6 worlds in Kirby 64, each taking place on a different planet that all host a handful of levels. Since you're hopping from one planet to another, the environments can change rapidly, though even in one world, there isn't always visual or thematic consistency. You've got the typical grasslands on Popstar and water levels on Aquastar, but then you have more unique worlds like Neostar, which features a more primitive, uninhabited feel to it. Shiverstar is my favorite. The abandoned man-made structures make for an interesting comparison to the natural settings of the other worlds, which has even fueled a rumor that this planet is actually Earth, or at least an Earth-like planet, after an apocalyptic event. The last part of each world involves taking down the bosses, and this, sadly, is where Kirby 64 falls flat for me. Most involve too much waiting around for an opportunity to attack, and the arenas aren't even that interesting. I do like how some of these bosses look though. The geometric boss Pix stands out to me for some reason, and I also love the giant robot HRH at the end of Shiverstar. It's a pretty cool design. That's another aspect of Kirby 64 that I took note of during this playthrough, the character designs and specifically how limited they are. We have very simple polygonal models for the characters here, even for Nintendo 64 standards, though I get that you don't go into a Kirby game expecting a grand visual style. Some enemies don't look great, especially the Scarfies. I don't know what happened to them, and overall, I'd say the game's graphics haven't aged spectacularly, a little too angular even for a game from 2000. The Kirby gang looks alright though, and I especially like the use of facial animations to express their mood, something that previous games always used to great effect. It helps sell the cutscenes as well, and on that note, I really like these little moments between each of the worlds. They're cute and funny, but they've also got a pretty chill vibe, like a group of friends just kinda hanging out while also providing a sense of adventure. And then you've got the music by Kirby series composers Jun Ishikawa and Hirozaku Ando, which is some pretty amazing stuff. Maybe it's because I grew up with these songs, but Kirby 64's music has always stood out to me as being a great soundtrack for the console. There's some nice renditions of classic Kirby compositions, but the original tunes are also great, with Quiet Forest, Ruins, and the boss theme being some of my favorites. I definitely recommend giving this soundtrack a listen. It's got some incredible songs. Anyway, once you've made it through all 6 worlds, it's time to head into the final bosses, which, as the Kirby series has oddly gained a reputation for, are dark, brooding god monsters. There's 2 endings in Kirby 64 depending on how many Crystal Shards you collected. If you don't have them all, you're stuck with the normal ending after battling Miracle Matter, and this fight's really cool. It takes advantage of all your copy abilities by changing its form, forcing you to adapt to the boss with different strategies. The ending itself is deliberately unsatisfying, hinting at something bigger, but leaving you without a proper resolution. But if you found all the Crystal Shards before you fight Miracle Matter, after finishing that battle, the being known as Zero 2 emerges and Kirby uses his, cell phone? To call upon a Warp Star and head to the final fight. And boy, I do not care for this boss. It's a Star Fox-esque boss fight where you're just floating around and shooting Zero 2 wherever his weak spot is. It's slow, clunky, and just not very interesting. A poor way to end this otherwise really enjoyable adventure. I've never really cared for the trend where a Kirby final boss turns the game into a shoot 'em up, and this is one of the worst in my opinion, thanks to how sluggish it is, especially rotating around to find the right place to shoot. But you know, despite these flaws, I still really like Kirby 64 The Crystal Shards, so much that I can now definitively call it my favorite Kirby game. The gameplay is a little loose and the bosses are a disappointment, but the graphics are solid, the music is great, and the levels are fun to travel through. I love the copy ability combinations and how creative they are, and the quest to find all the Crystal Shards really appeals to me as someone who enjoys collectathons. It isn't very deep, and I can understand how its simplicity and less than perfect controls can turn people away, but in my eyes, that simplicity is refreshing. I've played a lot of platformers that are incredibly intricate and sophisticated, and many of them are great, but every so often you need a more elementary adventure as a counterbalance. And this one comes in an adorable, colorful little package, so you really can't go wrong here. Having now played a handful of Kirby games, I'm really excited to see more of the series for myself. I already mentioned Forgotten Land, but there are a ton of entries in the Kirby series that I've yet to play. Amazing Mirror and Return to Dreamland are high on the list, and I'd also love to give more spin-offs like Kirby's Dream Course a try. Let me know what your favorite Kirby games are in the comments below. I'd love to hear which of the Pink Goofballs adventures I should try next. And while you're at it, why not give this video a like, leave a comment, and subscribe and click that bell to be notified when I upload new videos. I'm trying something new with this video, condensed reviews rather than full-on retrospectives, so please let me know if there's anything you think I can improve for next time. Until then, this is Cloud Connection signing off.